Hello, thank you for attending. This webinar is to cover how to implement a paywall. My name is Chris Cheney and I'm the CTO at MPP Global Solutions. I've been here since we were founded 12 or so years ago, so I've grown up with the company. We're in the business of monetizing content, helping our customers monetize content and providing payments and billing solutions. And one of the things that has become prevalent over the last 3 to 5 years is the whole paywall issue and helping clients implement paywalls. Just a few housekeeping things to start off with. Hopefully everybody can see the slide that's just coming up. Just give it a second. Okay, so you can ask questions as we go through this by raising your hand, which is actually clicking an icon on the left-hand side of the screen. Alternatively, you can type a question, and we'll be pausing to answer as many as we can. I might try and sort of get through the presentation and then deal with questions afterwards. It just depends on sort of how many come through and whether they can wait. And at the end of, or 3/4 of the way through the session, we're going to be conducting a poll, so a question will pop up which we'd kindly like to ask you to answer, and then we'll complete the session with, let's say, some questions at the end. Okay, so hopefully everybody can hear me. Let's start. Okay, so I'm going to start initially by just talking about the kind of things that a business needs to consider when deciding whether or not to proceed with a paywall project, and then move on to some of the actual issues that arise when that decision's been made, the kind of technological considerations and processes that are affected when this actually happens in a business. What's a paywall? Well, very simply, a paywall is a system that prevents internet users from accessing web page content without first paying. Now, in this session, we're not going to talk about or spend a lot of time talking about the right and wrongs of paywalls, but more focusing on the things that need to be thought about when implementing one. So typically, businesses in the publishing content sector, they need to generate revenue, and traditionally that's been done via advertising. The other option is direct revenues from customers, where your paywall comes in. Now, most businesses will probably have good, solid, robust processes around advertising, but they may not yet have actually thought about generating revenues and having the systems and processes in place to collect money from customers. So the first thing to do is to really understand what you're trying to do here. And this hinges around your business and primarily what content are you actually selling. So you as a business have a need to generate revenue, but your customers have a need to consume content, and they will have a specific value judgment on that content, and this becomes very important. Who are your customers and what are they interested in? You probably have done all your market research and probably have a very good idea because this is your core business. But sometimes when you start to go digital, the actual answer is slightly different to your traditional answers if you're a traditional print business. So consider doing it again, really understand what the customers are and what they're looking to get from your business. Have you profiled them? So a lot of businesses will spend time actually detailing who consumes their content, what do they read, what are their habits, what's their propensity to change habits. And you've got existing customers, but who are your future customers? So 10 years down the road, how is your profile of customer going to change? Ask the question, why is the customer going to pay? Really understand that you have a need to generate revenue, but they have a need to understand value. And quite often you can implement a paywall, do all the processes right, but get the basics wrong, and that is that the price is just slightly wrong or the content is slightly misdirected, misaligned. So understanding value perception is very, very important here. And do lots of research and engage your customers to test those assumptions that you might have. Okay, so question, are you a new business going digital for the first time and you're only going to offer digital content? That puts you in a slightly different place to an existing business that has traditionally distributed their content via a print model and is looking to extend digital. So, the first question here is for those latter businesses, are you going to bundle your digital access with your print? If you are, there's things to be aware of. There's potentially tax, VAT implications because the VAT on print is different to digital, and so bundling poses problems. You might want to consider engaging professionals to help you with that process. Is actually your print audience, is your plan over time to migrate them to a digital model, or do you see your digital sector as a completely different set of users? And probably the answer is a combination of both. Once you've kind of answered those questions, we're now then into starting to think about the actual technical implementation and the practical problems. And at this point, at what point does your paywall actually trigger? So there are different types of paywall. High level, you have a hard paywall, allowing minimal or no access to content without paying. And this, in traditional newspaper businesses, has often been frowned upon, but might be very pertinent in a business that's selling content orientated at business where people expect to pay. A soft paywall offers more flexibility in what users can view. What business rules drive this? So the general feeling, certainly personally from my perspective, but what I see in the industry is that you can't necessarily predict 12, 24 months out how you actually want to configure the flexibility around your paywall. So it's important really at the early stages to understand and to give yourself the levers to be able to configure and pull to actually change the model on the way that the paywall comes in. So it might be driven by a click model, so 10 clicks and you start paying. It might be driven on a time-based model, 10 minutes per day browsing and you start paying. It might be based on how you segment your site and how you proportion value to your content. But this is generally, the general rule of thumb is give yourself flexibility here, because you might not get the answer right on the first day, and there probably needs to be some feedback loop where you run with something, you look at the success, you have the reporting in place to give you the answers, and then you tweak and refine until you get it absolutely right. The freemium model comes in here, so a play on the word free and premium. Generally, you're giving users a light option, so a taster of the content, and those people that see the value in it and want more will then upgrade to some premium model. Normally, access and entitlements has some subscription element to it, but you might have pay-per-view in place as well, and you might download a specific edition and pay for that edition, or you have a time-based subscription model, 7 days, a month, a year, and if you do that, then probably some kind of offer incentives to get people 50% on the first period, or even fully discounted on the first period. But ultimately, basically getting people locked into needing your content, being aware of what it is that they're getting and getting familiar with it. Also at this point, thinking about paywall. So if you want to turn it off for some reason, you might have system problems. Do you fail open? Do you fail closed? If you fail open, then everybody will get access to the content for a period. If you fail closed, nobody will get access to the content for a period. And having the control to be able to turn it off for a business or a moral reason, such as there's a global or a national emergency and you're providing news, and for a period of 1 day or 2 days you want people to be able to get access to your content. And often, these kind of things, they might even be marketing driven, so you can actually, generate these things to actually bring people in and expose them to your content and give them a taster. Geographies, so one thing's for sure is that credit card and debit card payments are used in most places around the world, but not all, and there's a propensity in some countries to prefer localized payment types, things like Gyro Pay, Ideal, over that. And typically you would offer at least one, but probably two payment options in each region, and maybe even 3 or 4. But at the same time, bearing in mind that you want to keep the decision process as simple as possible for the customer. In internal sort of processes and reporting, are all things that need to be considered. Product and pricing. So again, the structure around how you group your content and you generate the products that you present to your customer, well, first of all, they need to be simple for the customer to understand. But the structure is largely going to be defined by your system, but the metrics and the parameters within it, such as price, can be easily adjusted. So in the early stage of a project, get the structure right and give yourself enough flexibility to sort of change the parameters within it. And also, don't underestimate the organizational impact of a paywall. So, if you're a traditional print business, then the chances are you'll have people in the organization that have been doing it for 10 or 20 years, and they have a way of thinking. And going digital is, for the organization, can be a nervous change, it can be a scary change, and you're likely to experience resistance both in the operational level and at board level. And it's not uncommon to have split boards with a different view to moving forward. And often you'll see actually that boards will adopt a semi-risk-averse approach where the people that want to do it make the argument to put all of the systems here to give ourselves the ability to turn it on when we need to, and that then sort of goes some way to satisfying the people that really want to protect existing revenues and ensure that the existing business isn't damaged. So it's something that has to be really understood, considered, and certainly you can't just plow on without addressing the organizational needs, and don't be surprised for a few heated discussions. It also comes down to something just I'll come to later, but executive sign-off and executive buy-in for these kind of projects is really fundamental. The whole business model of an organization is going to change, and everybody has to be on board with it. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the softer issues that might be tackled before you actually get into a hard implementation project. So I'm going to move on now to the actual, okay, as a business we've decided to go ahead with it. We've probably decided to give ourselves plenty of flexibility so that we can adapt as information comes in the future. But we know that we're going to have the underlying capability to turn on the paywall and start charging customers as and when we see fit. So we bring all the people together in a room and we get the project kicked off. So straight away we're going to be thinking about the technology side of it. Probably as a publishing business, we've already gone digital. We're offering free content. We'll have a web farm of some form. We're able to offer our website up. We'll have a CMS system that drives it, content management system. We may have a CRM system, so we may be asking people to register to blog or comment on news stories or articles or etc. So we're probably going to have at least one user base. We might already be charging for services that have been offered by third parties, so we might have customers, but we might not have direct access to the customer data. We may or may not have a session management system, and session management system is definitely going to be needed once we are identifying users and sort of we're not just serving up web pages anonymously. And we may or may not have an access management system, so issuing customers with username and passwords, etc., and allowing them to manage those. So we're certainly going to have some of those components. We may need to add some of them in. If we haven't done a paywall before, we probably need some enforcer components. So this is a set of tools that plug into the content management system and the web distribution system and actually allow the rules-based triggering of when people need to pay. We're going to need an entitlement system that identifies what entitlements to content a user has and probably links in heavily with the CRM and SAM system. We're going to need a payment and billing system. We might already have a payment system, but there's a good chance it won't be complex enough and have enough of the features required for this solution, so we might need to upgrade that or swap it out. And we may or may not have a CRM system. A lot of companies in the publishing business are using CRM such as Salesforce and other systems, and that's fine. That can be extended and added to create a paywall. And we probably need an offers and incentives engine to allow us to drive and distribute offers, activation codes, etc., to drive traffic. So, depending on how our web pages are served up, we might be using a CDN, Akamai, Amazon CloudFront, maybe edge-side includes scripts, etc. So there'll be a solution there that can be plugged into those that gives the enforcer component, which allows the rules-based triggering of when directing people to the payment flow and the registration flow. We may be using IIS or Apache running our own servers, but either way, there's the solutions. We provide solutions for those, and it's normally a case of just engaging the team that runs that into the project and explaining what's needed to get that enforcer in. We'll look at the purchase flows, and we'll start to design the user experience. So typically it distills down to it's got to be as simple as possible. You select your products, you register, you pay, you view, but there's slight variations on that, and you can tweak with the ordering, particularly at the point that you start introducing offers and how you introduce the offers. So that needs to be thought through and designed. Selecting the pages to actually lock down. So depending on the decisions that were made in the first section that I discussed, you're going to be wanting to segment your content somehow, and that could be driven from the CMS system. So flags on asset items in the CMS system actually indicate to the serving up system that the page is needs to have an entitlement against it, and then maps the entitlements to that, so that when a user arrives, logs in, registers, and it checks that they have got access to the content, or if they haven't, it forces them to either log in or register and purchase. The customer data storage is something, again, you're going to inevitably have multiple systems at play here, and at this point you sit down and you work out your data model and identify which systems act as the master for certain data. So all the kind of good stuff you do in any IT implementation project. And you're going to be forming a project team. So bringing in, ideally here you want somebody that's been through this process before, knows the pitfalls, hopefully can shorten the project timescales by just avoiding the obvious mistakes. And your executive are really bought into this. So, again, as with any IT implementation project, changes at a late stage can be really problematic. And, tendency to focus on, we can deal with that with Agile, but the reality is that, you're best off avoiding it in the first place. To get your exec buy-in early, keep them tuned into the issues, make sure that right at the outset they all understand what decisions they need to make, give them a little bit of time to think about it, and then set the expectation that they need to make those decisions and keep them focused, and try and move them as a body rather than as individuals, because if you have certain people keeping tuned in and others busy with other stuff, and suddenly at the 8th hour in a project they decide that the marketing director wants to do it a slightly different way or whatever, then that's just going to cause problems. So really important, probably the biggest single important thing that I would say any organization or any project manager for a paywall needs to keep on top of. What kind of timescales you're talking about? Well, technology-wise, there's no reason why a paywall can't be implemented in 3 months. But you often, and depending on how well you deal with the other issues in the business, that can get extended. And if you're talking about a startup, then it can even be shorter than that. So the timescales can be short, and often you find actually that it's the business wanting to go slow because of all the softer issues around setting expectations in the market, etc. That actually drives the overall project timescales, not the actual technical implementation. And the other thing to consider here is your user base. And so in an ideal world, you really want to be signing up all of your users via direct, via your website, because then you can own that customer, you can cross and upsell to them, and presumably you'll be having some kind of content available on iTunes or Kindle or Android, and if you can get those customers to come to you direct and then give them an entitlement to view the content on Android or iTunes, then that's great because you don't pay them 30%. But also recognize that you've got fantastic marketing opportunities within these environments, and give the customers an incentive so when they do sign up via direct via iTunes that they share their data, because they don't have to, they can remain anonymous, and there's in the process of signing up to an app, you can be asked whether you want to share your data with said organization. At that point, you really want to incentivize them and give them all of the benefits as to why they should do it. And if they do, well then you can ultimately market to them on an ongoing basis and try and convert them into a direct subscriber. And that's going to give you a better relationship with them sort of moving forward. So it's quite typical if you go onto iTunes and download the app, that's the only way that you can view the content. But if you sign up via the web, then you can view it via your PC or via your Android or iPad app. So big incentives, and you can also then think about loyalty systems. So if you sign up direct, well, you also get bundled into our loyalty program. So the more things you buy, the more credits you get, the more cross-marketing, cross-sale opportunities there. Products and incentive systems, don't just think about your user base. So when I was a kid, my dad read a certain newspaper, and funnily enough, I read that newspaper now. Some people, quite the opposite, actually avoid the paper their dad read, but you get the point. It's all about getting those users for 10 years down the road engaged at an early stage. They will have a different usage propensity to existing users, but probably be already digital in a certain way. And in 10 years' time, they're not going to think twice about paying $9.99 a month for something, whereas they might only be prepared to pay either nothing or a few quid now. So can you engage those future users now, get them really bought into your content so it becomes a habit for them? Ultimately, people are creatures of habit. So your product incentive system, you need something where you can be really creative there. Give the marketing team a lot of options to go around, but also make sure that the systems can support all the things that they're likely to want to do, distributing voucher codes and targeting different market sectors. And reporting and financial marketing, all these reporting systems, financial and marketing focused, tend to get really left to the end of a project. But ultimately, really important you get that right from the beginning, because the data that you generate through actual usage is going to give you a real competitive advantage, and it provides a feedback mechanism back into the actual way the paywall works and the metrics that drive the paywall, so that you can tweak and refine and actually base sort of the future design of it on the actual information that you're getting from sort of real life usage. So don't leave that to the last minute to get right. Okay, so just take a breath there. The next section, actually, I think we could do. Are we doing the? Okay, so the billing types and models. I'll just finish this section of it. It's fairly quick, and then we'll do the poll. The billing system is something that really sits behind all of this and makes it possible. And the type of we've already sort of covered this briefly, but the type of billing mechanisms that you should definitely have up there are credit card and debit card. Obviously, you probably want for each region a form of direct bank transfer. So the UK direct debit. We typically find that direct debit, can account for up to 50% of users. It all depends on the profile of the user base, but it's very popular in the UK. And even PayPal is, I say even PayPal, PayPal is the, nowhere near as used as much as credit card, debit card direct and direct debit, but still, potentially accounting for 10% of your transactions. Local payment types in other countries, Ideal, Gyro Pay, all those kind of things, again, important for those regions. The billing model, this will have been designed up front, but, again, give yourself flexibility to change if you need to. So you might start off with a metering and then realize it doesn't work for your business and you want to move to subscription. Well, much better to have that capability built in from the start. So metering is, typically you're somehow measuring the usage of the system and then charging them. Tends to be less common. I mean, the most common is a direct subscription, and pay as you go. Quite important. If you want, if you're issue based or you do have events that are driven, around your content, but typically, you need a combination of different billing models. We'll just transition on to the next slide. So, okay, so we're now ready for the poll, and it'd be great if you could, 30 seconds or so, just to answer this question. So how important do you see paywalls as being to the financial future of the publishing industry? So the figures are starting to come through. I mean, very unsurprisingly, 83% or so say very important, although we're not quite finished yet. Okay. Thank you for that. Just a quick, I mean, most of you will be familiar with these kind of things, but just a quick idea here of something that we went through a few years ago at the Times in the UK. This screen cam will give you a feel for the user journey that a customer would experience once they hit the paywall. Hopefully that's coming up on your screen now. So you're browsing the site and the rules-based engine trips in and says that you need to pay. Now, important here to keep the options limited. Really, if you can't decide as a consumer within 5 seconds which one you want, then it's too complicated. And normally there's some kind of short-term pass and then a longer-term option. Short-term, so you might actually across all your product range have quite a number of different options, but when you present them to customers on the user journey, distill them right down to 1, 2, or maximum of 3 options. Now, user here, so you can combine the personal detail entry with payment details, but it's generally, most companies like to keep them separate. Try and keep the information that you acquire in the first stage to a minimum. It is tempting to start asking them, things, how old are they, and all these kind of things that the customers like to answer. But ultimately, think about them. They just want to get through this journey as quickly as possible. This is a burden to them as a user, and perhaps you can find ways to pick up that information at a later date. But ultimately, your marketing team will decide on that one. Again, things like address, home address, it's good to know, but it's not actually necessary. The Times decided to collect it. You don't have to collect it. It's not required for payments or credit card payments. Again, payment details, quick as possible. Typical authorization times here need to be, below a second to keep the journey nice and quick. So we've got 3 steps there on the journey, and that could potentially be 2 steps. And then at this point, you'd have various emails going out to the customer to give them some of the other information that they don't need to know right now. Okay, so that's the end of that screen cam. So I'm happy to sort of answer. We've been through quite a lot of these projects, and I can answer some, not specifically, but sort of generally, I can answer some questions on this one. So I've got a question here: is what is a good way to handle pages with mixed premium and free content from an access control perspective? Also thinking about CDN. Okay, so that's an interesting one. I think the question, it doesn't normally happen actually that that a single page would have both free and mixed content. So I mean, the obvious answer is to try and split it up so that you don't get in that situation in the first place. If you do, then most page distribution systems are template driven, and there's no reason why you can't actually block out parts of the template based on entitlements check. So it certainly would be possible to offer a page that showed both free and mixed content, but must admit I've not seen it actually ever come up as a requirement. But if the system, the template, the distribution system, and the content management system, the entitlement system is set up correctly, then it should be quite possible to blank that out or just say that you need to click here to pay. So just reading through some of the other questions coming through here. Okay, so can you tell us more about incentivized entry referred to earlier? Also, is a data wall a way to go as opposed to a paywall? So the incentivized entry system, I mean, there's many ways that you can do this, but typically it's the obvious one is to do the first month or the first period free or at 50%. You can do different targeting, so you can do a general incentivization that's offered to all customers, or you can do a targeted. So we tend to issue voucher codes which are distributed through a marketing process, and those voucher codes can actually be tied to an existing account to try and get people to upgrade or downgrade, or they can be general use but used only once. So once they're used, then they can't be distributed again. And we don't actually, in that situation, care how many, whether they get passed on, as long as somebody signs up from the back of one. And then you can think about things like, well, normal when you ask somebody to give them a month free, you do actually ask for the payment details up front. So that the deal is that I'll give you a month free, but you have to be in a position to pay at the end of that. And if you do cancel in the meantime, then fair enough. But we're not going to allow people to come in and then in a month's time just have to engage them again to ask for their payment details to get them to pay again. The incentivizations, there's lots of different ways you can target it, and you can give people distribute free day passes so people can go and get a flavour for the actual content, etc. The second part, I'm not quite sure what's actually meant here by also is a data wall a way to go as opposed to a paywall. Good question. I'll probably have to come back to that person on that one. Do you also manage newspaper subscriber accounts too? So I think that question is possibly orientated at print subscribers, and the answer to that question is yes. We actually did a project recently where it started out as being a digital paywall, but then throughout the course of the project it just made sense to take the existing print user base and put in the system so it was combined with the digital and print were all handled by the same system. So it's certainly something that companies do consider, do, and generally is a good thing to do, but it may not always be possible. So if we have another question here, if we have multiple titles, would you recommend running a centralized paywall across all of them, or single paywalls for each? Well, one of the big things that is really important to do here is keep a single view of your customers. So a lot of companies have started. We started off with one project recently where the company already had something over 50 different systems in place offering different services, and one of the project goals was not just to implement a paywall, but it was also to centralize all of the data, all of the payment processing, all of the entitlement management systems, so that moving forward they just had a single view of all their customers across a relatively fragmented business. So that's it, actually. I've got through all the questions there. Thank you very much for your time. I'm just going to go through the poll results here. So you can see here 77% said very important, 23 slightly important, and nobody thought it was unimportant or irrelevant. That's it. That's the time for today. If anybody wants to contact me directly after this, then be very happy to hear from you. Certainly, I'll be available to answer any questions. So either contact myself directly or contact us through the standard sales and marketing channels. And that's it for today. I hope it was of interest, and I look forward